Access your neural recovery zones. Sleep beyond rest. She stared at the ceiling again. Third night in a row. Her body was exhausted, her mind racing, and she couldn't understand why rest never felt like rest anymore. Most of us think sleep is just about closing our eyes and waking up hours later. But what if I told you that the most important work your brain does happens in places you've never consciously visited? She used to think she slept fine. 7 hours most nights. Sometimes 6. But lately, even after a full night, she'd wake up feeling like she'd been running a marathon in her mind. Her focus was slipping, her memory felt foggy, and the worst part, she couldn't figure out what she was doing wrong. What she didn't know yet was that her brain had been trying to reach something critical, and she kept interrupting it. There's a place in your brain that only activates when everything else goes quiet. Neuroscientists call it the glymphatic system, your brain's waste removal network. But here's the thing, it only turns on during deep sleep. Think of it like a night crew that cleans a busy restaurant after closing. If you keep opening the doors, turning on the lights, checking your phone, the crew can't do their job. She didn't realize she was doing exactly that. Every time she scrolled before bed, every time she woke up to check the time, every time her room stayed just a little too warm or a little too bright, her brain couldn't access the recovery zones it desperately needed. And without that access, toxins accumulated. Neural pathways stayed cluttered. Memory consolidation never finished. She thought she was resting, but her brain was stuck in maintenance mode, unable to complete the cycle. It started with small things. She'd forget where she put her keys, lose track of conversations, mid-sentence feel irritable for no reason. Then came the bigger signs. Her creativity felt dull. Problems that used to excite her now just felt heavy. She started wondering if something was actually wrong with her. But what happened next changed everything. One night, after another restless stretch of half-sleep, she decided to try something different. No phone after 9 p.m. Blackout curtains, temperature set to 67 degrees. And instead of lying there hoping for sleep, she gave herself permission to let go. Really let go. The first night, nothing dramatic happened. But by the third night, something shifted. She dreamed vividly. Woke up once, but didn't panic. And when morning came, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Clarity. Not the jittery kind from caffeine, the deep, quiet kind that comes from a brain that's finally had time to clean house. Researchers at the University of Rochester discovered something remarkable about the glymphatic system. During deep sleep, the space between your brain cells actually expands by up to 60%. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to flush out metabolic waste, including beta amyloid, the protein linked to Alzheimer's disease. But here's the critical part. This only happens in the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, and most of us never get there. We cycle in and out of light sleep, REM sleep, brief awakenings. Our brains are working, sure, but they're not recovering. She started tracking her sleep with a simple journal, not obsessively, just noting how she felt, what she did before bed, how many times she woke up. Patterns emerged. On nights she ate late, her sleep was shallow. On nights she watched intense shows, her dreams were chaotic. On nights she stayed consistent, same time, same routine, same environment. Her brain finally had space to breathe. Part of her still doubted it could work long term. After all, she'd tried sleep advice before. Meditation apps, white noise machines, herbal teas, they helped a little. But nothing felt sustainable. What surprised her most wasn't just how magnesium glycinate improved her experience with deep sleep, but how everything started to feel different once she switched to the right method. She wasn't expecting such a clear change, and honestly, she tested it more than a few times before she figured out what really worked. This isn't a promotion, just sharing real results that made a noticeable difference for me. I'll leave the link below if you want to explore what I mean. But supplements weren't the whole story. What really made the difference was understanding what her brain actually needed. She learned that sleep isn't one thing, it's a symphony of neurological processes, each with its own timing, its own purpose. Stage 1 is the transition. Stage 2 consolidates memories. Stage 3, deep sleep, is where the glymphatic system activates. And REM sleep integrates emotions, creativity, and problem solving. Most people think REM is the most important, and it is, but not without the foundation of deep sleep. First, she realized she'd been optimizing for the wrong thing. She thought waking up remembering dreams meant she slept well. But those vivid dream-filled nights often meant she spent too much time in REM and not enough in deep recovery. It was like exercising without ever letting your muscles repair. Then came the real test. A stressful week at work. Deadlines piling up. The kind of pressure that used to wreck her sleep for days. But this time, something was different. Even though her mind was racing, her body knew what to do. She stuck to her routine, dimmed the lights, let her nervous system wind down naturally, and she slept. Not perfectly, not without some restlessness, but her brain still reached those recovery zones. Still flushed out the stress hormones, still gave her what she needed to face the next day. She laughed, realizing resilience didn't mean never struggling, it meant having systems that worked even when life didn't cooperate. Sometimes, we only understand strength when it's tested. For her, that test wasn't a crisis. It was the accumulation of small, consistent choices that finally added up. Researchers at Stanford found something similar. When routine meets meaning, consistency finally sticks. It's not about perfection. It's about creating conditions where your brain can do what it's designed to do. And what it's designed to do every single night is heal. There's a concept in neuroscience called synaptic homeostasis. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. During the day, your brain forms thousands of new connections. It learns, adapts, reacts, but if those connections never get pruned, your brain becomes overloaded. Signal-to-noise ratio drops. Everything feels harder. Deep sleep is when that pruning happens. Your brain reviews the day's experiences, decides what to keep, what to let go, and strengthens the connections that matter most. Without it, you're not just tired, you're operating with a cluttered mind. She started noticing this in her daily life. On mornings after deep sleep, she could focus for hours. Her memory felt sharp. Conversations flowed naturally. On mornings after poor sleep, even simple tasks felt like wading through fog. The difference wasn't motivation, it wasn't willpower, it was neural recovery. What would you do in that moment if you realized your brain had been trying to help you all along, but you kept getting in the way? She felt a strange mix of relief and frustration. Relief, because finally, it made sense. Frustration, because she'd spent years fighting her body instead of listening to it. But she didn't dwell on that. She focused on what she could control now. One thing she changed, she stopped treating sleep like a luxury. In a culture that glorifies hustle, rest feels like weakness. Like something you earn only after everything else is done. But she realized that was backwards. Sleep wasn't the reward for a productive day. It was the foundation that made productivity possible. Every great idea, every moment of clarity, every burst of creativity, they all came after nights when her brain had space to reset. She stopped apologizing for going to bed early. Stopped feeling guilty for prioritizing rest, and the people around her noticed. Not because she talked about it, but because she showed up differently. More present, more patient, more herself. There was still one thing she couldn't explain. Why did some nights feel restorative even if she slept less, while other nights left her drained even after sleeping more? The answer, she learned, was in the cycles. Sleep isn't measured in hours alone. It's measured in complete 90-minute cycles. Each cycle takes you through all the stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM, and back again. Waking up in the middle of a cycle, especially during deep sleep, feels terrible. Your brain is mid-process, and you're forcing it to stop. But waking up at the end of a cycle, even after just 6 hours, can feel surprisingly good. She started timing her sleep in multiples of 90 minutes. 6 hours, 7.5, 9. And suddenly, the quality of her mornings transformed. Sometimes, progress didn't look like progress. There were still hard nights. Nights when anxiety crept in. Nights when her mind wouldn't quiet. But even on those nights, she trusted the process. She didn't panic, didn't reach for her phone, didn't spiral into frustration. She just breathed. Let her body rest, even if her mind was busy, and over time, even those nights became easier. Somewhere between the failures and the quiet mornings, she found rhythm and peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from having everything figured out, but the kind that comes from knowing your body is on your side. Her brain wasn't broken. It was just asking for what it needed. And when she finally gave it that consistent sleep, a calm environment, respect for its natural cycles, everything else started falling into place. When she looked in the mirror again, it wasn't her reflection that had changed, it was what she believed about herself. She wasn't someone who just didn't sleep well. She was someone who understood her brain, honored its needs, and showed up for herself in the quietest, most important way. And that shift, that internal knowing, changed everything. This isn't medical advice. It's a story about what's possible when you stop fighting your biology and start working with it. If you've been struggling with sleep, with focus, with that persistent fog that won't lift, maybe your brain is just waiting for you to access those recovery zones. Maybe it's been trying to tell you something all along. Tell us what part of this story resonated most and where you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.